Question 39, ito ay application para sa equal protection of the laws at saka yung uniformity of taxation. Ang scenario is, the legislative body of the Republic passes a new tax law, then imposes 5,000 annual fixed tax on all professionals, but explicitly exempts professionals practicing within the designated economic zone, development zones, whose primary clients are foreign-owned corporations operating within said zones. Now, this exemption is justified by the legislature as a necessary incentive to attract foreign investment. Okay, now that's the justification. Now, which of the following constitutional inherent limitations of the power of the taxation is most likely violated? Because kung titingnan natin, parang walang masyadong substantial distinction. Kasi ano naman yung pagbasihan, bakit kailangan exempted yung nandun sa economic development zone, samantala yung nasa isa is subject to 5,000. So, ang gawin natin is hanapin natin yung ano yung mga constitutional and inherent limitations of the power of taxation na most likely violated by the new law, and what is the fundamental reason for the violation. Okay, now titingnan natin yung letter A. Violation of the uniformity in taxation. The law is uniform because it applies to all professionals, and the exemption is valid exercise of classification, provided it is based on reasonable grounds. It's not purely arbitrary. Now, dito makikita natin parang kulang yung kanyang explanation kasi una, when we are going to classify or when we are going to make a class legislation, ang mangyari dyan ay kailangan nandun yung tinatawag na yung rules ng classification na first is based on substantial difference. But I don't see any substantial difference of this. Okay. Then, second is germane to the purpose. Okay. Now, kung titingnan mo, ang purpose is to attract investment. And I don't see what investment that is to be attracted by making exempted those professionals na nagpa-practice doon within the economic development zones. So, there's no logical explanation. So, it must be germane to the purpose. So, what's here, we cannot, it cannot be justified with this second ground, second requirement for the equal protection of the laws for the classification. The third is it must not be limited to, but not limited to existing conditions. However, this one is not applicable this time. On the fourth is it must equally apply to the members. Well, this is not violated. However, again, only the 1 and 2 are violated at this case. So, hence therefore, this A is not a good answer for this time. Letter B is violates the Equal Protection Clause, and because the classification of professionals inside versus outside is not based on substantial distinction, which is obviously, yes, that germane to the purpose. Okay, for example of this germane to the purpose is, let's say giving tax exemption for those companies that are within the economic development zones, while those outside doesn't have tax exemption. The purpose of that is to boost the economy and invite or encourage more investments here, direct investments coming from the foreign companies. So that's the purpose. That's why. So basically, the classification of those companies that are within the economic development zones is germane to that purpose. Obviously, apparently, that serves that second requirement, which resulted also into a substantial difference. Of course, there's a difference between those within the economic, because within the economic development zones, companies are intended for export, which is intended to earn more dollars, while the local companies outside of that are not. So therefore, that is a valid classification. While in this case, it does not serve that way. Kung titingnan nyo, hindi ganon yung nangyari. So that's why, ang sabi dito, it has not, the substantial distinction there does not germane to the purpose of the law, which is to raise revenue from all professionals. Okay, so most probably our answer here is letter C. But let's see the other. Letter B. Let's see the other choices. Now in letter C, let's cancel for a while. In letter C, violation equitability in taxation. Equitability talks about the ability to pay, that the more burden on those who have more earnings, like that. The law violates the equitability principles because the tax burden is unequal. Yeah, in that way, in that sense, but as only the small subset of professionals are subjected to the 5,000 fixed tax, while others are entirely exempt without clear basis. Yeah, but I think this is not, it's not talking about the equitability. It's talking about classification in here. So that's why it does not synchronize with the title, and also, yeah, with the violation and the reason of that violation. Ang kaapat ay violation of uniformity and equitability. The law violates uniformity because it lacks geographic application throughout the taxing district, and it violates equitability because the tax rate is too burdensome for low-income professionals compared to high-income. Not sure this is about geographic, and does it make sense? It's not about geographic application. It's about involving within the economic zone and outside the economic zone. It's not geographic, actually. It's not about the taxing district, except. And also, if you talk about uniform equitability, it's not talking about geographic. Okay, because the classifications in here is not about the geographic. It's about the professionals that are serving for those companies that are within the economic zone. So of course, there's practicing within that, but does not mean that they need to be there for the economic development zones. So therefore, the answer in here is letter B. Now, to reinforce that, just to to give more explanation, sa ganitong scenario kasi, ang purpose ng taxation is mag-raise ng revenue galing sa professionals. Exempting natin yung subclass of professions and base location and their clients. Okay? It's not a direct germane to the substantially distinguishable from the class of all other professionals. Kasi ang classification dito is nandun sa client. Kung if you will classify the professionals based on what the client they serve, it is not the application of the classification that is based on germane to its purpose, and which could raise to a substantial distinction between them. Professionals inside at saka yung outside sa EDCs are still earning professional income. So ganun pa rin. Nangyari lang, iba lang yung siniserve nila. But if you try to, if you try to analyze it, walang kaibahan. The exemption, though intended siya para sa economic development, may be considered as an arbitrary classification. Kasi nga, bakit nangyaring arbitrary? Kasi nga, walang substantial distinction. So, bakit bigyan mo siya ng exemption, ang iba hindi? As it creates unwarranted distinction, those who are similarly situated, all being. Example, parehas kayo ng opisina doon sa Maynila, pero you're to serve different clients. One is serving clients within the economic zone. Well, it does not serve the purpose again of having the classification and of those requirements. Neither of the four, actually, as you can see. So that's why the law is most likely invalid for violating the Equal Protection Clause. So this is an application of Equal Protection Clause and not a uniformity, because there's no issue about the application of the rules equally within the classification. The issue is about the classification itself, not yet the application of those rates.